everybody. Welcome once again to Transform Church Online. I can't wait to get into the message and hear what our speaker has for us today. Before we do, please do us a favor by sharing this broadcast on your social media platform so we can reach others with these life-transforming messages. This is as simple as clicking the thumbs up icon on Facebook. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please do the same. And also don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We would love to see you in person. Please visit us at 88 Agar Drive, Truganina. That's in the western suburbs of Melbourne. Now, as we get into the message, feel free to engage with us and share your thoughts on the message. Or just say hi and let us know where you're joining us from. Let's jump right into it now and join our speaker for today, Pastor Gregory J. Williams, as he brings us this message titled, In the Valley.
Today, we're starting a brand new series. It's always our Christmas series, so it's our Christmas series, and it's called God with Us. God with Us. In our new series, we'll be looking at how to grow in our walk with God, right? And if you're joining us for the very first time here at Transform, I want to welcome you and let you know this is a great place to be. We love questions, we love you, and we love to get to know you. So come talk to us after. We'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. And we also help you see where you fit in God's overall plan. That's why we exist as Transform, because we want to impact people around us, we want to change the environment, and we want every single one of us to actually step into the place that God has called us to, right? And so that's why we exist. And so if you're joining us on this series, it's a great place to start, and especially if you're a non-Christ follower, if you're exploring faith, if you're asking about Christianity, if your faith is on the teetering edge of why God does certain things, this is a great series to actually get into. So I'm glad that you're here if you're the very first time. It's a perfect series for you. This will help us see actually how God works in our everyday life. And it might not be in the way you think He does, but He definitely works in our everyday life. So our first episode in the series is called In the Valley. In the Valley. A little while ago, Chanel and I were driving up to the Dandenong Ranges, the mountains, whatever you call them. Are they hills, mountains? I'm not sure. Whatever you want to classify them as. We drove up, and, if you're driving in the city and you're driving up towards these hills, you notice something happening as you drive, right? Everything begins to change. The vegetation actually changes, right? The trees get bigger, there's more ferns, the temperature changes because you're going up a mountain, and you see some mist and other things that you might not normally see down in the valley. And then you notice that you're really driving in sort of unfamiliar territory. Everything is changed, and even to the point that you have pressure in your ears like you're going up in a plane because you're ascending this hill, and things are changing, right? And so the question we have is, have you ever had an experience where you're maybe driving across country from Melbourne to some other city or traveling anywhere else in the world, and you're in an unfamiliar place? Things are not looking the same because, you know what? You're not in your familiar territory. You're not in your neighborhood. You're not in the hood anymore. You're somewhere else. And everything is different. Our surroundings change. When our surroundings change, it's a sign to us that we are actually in a new place. It's a visual key indicator that, hey, you are not in familiar territory. You need to pay a little bit more attention because you're actually in unfamiliar territory. And we feel a little bit strange, right? We become a little bit more alert because we're no longer in the well-used roads and the familiarity of our streets, and all these things morph into very unfamiliar territory. And we feel, if you're being honest, a little bit out of place. And we try to look for signs or landmarks or things, and when I often drive, even though we have the help of modern technology and GPS, I try to figure out, hey, let me just figure out if there's a landmark I can fix my eyes onto, a building or a unique structure, a set of trees or whatever it may be, so I can hopefully trace my way back if my phone dies or whatever, at least something familiar that I can latch onto. Have you ever noticed that maybe when you're traveling, and those of you that might have traveled overseas, if you're traveling somewhere and you meet someone else that is from Melbourne, you instantly connect? You're like, hey, I'm from Melbourne too, because we're looking for familiarity in unfamiliar situations. And maybe it's someone from your similar background, and you go, hey, I'm from that place too. Because in a sea of unfamiliar things, we are trying to latch onto, we're trying to hold on to something familiar to make us feel a little bit more comfortable in unfamiliar situations. It's like your mind or your body is searching for something familiar to hold on to in the midst of very unfamiliar territory. And it's strange, right? Because we like comfortability. We like familiarity. But did you know that you actually grow more in unfamiliar places than you do in familiar places? Did you know that your brain grows more when you learn most new stuff than it does when you traverse the normal everyday routine? Because your brain has to create new neural links or synapses that need to connect to each other. And the more connections you have, the better your brain actually becomes. And this is very sciencey, but this is what it is. Research has established that among its many functions, the synapses play an important role in learning and memory. New information is absorbed and retained through a process characterized by changes in synaptic interconnections among neurons in the hippocampus and cerebral cortex, regions of the brain associated with memory. Basically, in the vernacular, to put it in normal language, this means when you learn new things, your brain actually grows. And to learn new things, you need to be in new places. Right? Because the more synapses and neural pathways you create, your brain actually grows and helps you as you get older to actually retain memory. And the way to do this in the simplest form is to be in unfamiliar territory. But the challenge for us is most of us don't like change. We're not really comfortable when we go into unfamiliar territories. Maybe it's a new environment, if it's even a new church that you're attending for the first time, or a new house, whatever it may be, a new part of the city, you're more alert when you're unfamiliar territory because your brain is searching to pick up things, and that's when you actually learn. You're uncomfortable, but you're actually growing. We love familiarity. We drive the same way home from work. We go to the same grocery stores, the shopping centers. And sometimes we wander out to try new experiences, but for the most part, we stay in the same routines, the same stores, the same parks, the same work, the same train, the same bus, the same neighborhood, the same people. We build familiarity with a group of people, which again does not flood our brain with new information to grow. And as Christ followers, we also carry this into our relationship with God. Because we want to see God do things, but we want Him to do things in our familiar territory, in the familiarity of our life, in the comfortable places where we are accustomed to. We don't like God moving us to new experiences because we are challenged and sometimes scared and intimidated because we are in unfamiliar places. However, God is more interested in seeing us increase in our faith, in our walk with Him, and also in our life. For Christ followers, it's easy for us, right, to understand God and to feel God and to believe God is working in our lives when we have the mountaintop experiences. When things are going great, like, wow, God is with me, right? When your team wins, you're like, woohoo, God really came through this time. When your kid sleeps through the night and you're not woken up, you're like, praise God, He really did some amazing things. When you're driving up, especially during, Black Friday or Christmas Eve, and you want to get to the shopping store and there's a parking spot right by the door, you're like, hoo, God's really working for me. God is with me, right? However, when it gets to more difficult times, when we are in the valley, and the valley means we're alone, and we're scared, and we're hurting, and it's bad news, and our marriage is in trouble, and our kids are struggling at school, and you can't find a job, and Christmas is stressing me out, and that cancer's really taking a toll on my life or my family. The valleys are the battle places, the lonely places, the desperate places. But what we don't realize is valleys are also the growth places. It's where we build our faith. It's where we experience God in different ways than we do on the mountaintops. We experience Him totally differently in the valley. We may enjoy God on the mountaintops, but we get to know Him intimately in the valleys. On the mountaintops, we may celebrate God, but it's in the valley we get to know God. In the valley, it's where we discover the depth of our trust in Him. It's in the valley where we learn the deeper facets of who He is. It's in the valley where we expose our level of trust and reliance on Him. That it's out of desperation, it's out of thirst, it's about a hunger, it's about hoping. It's when we really call on Him. There can be no mountaintop experiences if there's no valley experiences. So our experiences in life, the good, the bad, the happy, the sad, all of it can actually be used by God to draw us closer. If we have the right perspective. Because faith doesn't happen instantly. Most times we grow in our faith. And it's like a journey, right? Crossing difficult terrain. There are the ups and the downs, the mountains and the valley. As we traverse all of them to our desired destination, that's where we learn to trust the one we call on. And so we're going to look at this experience through one of the songwriters in the book of Psalms. This was actually penned by the sons of Korah. And it's classified as a pilgrimage psalm. It was sung as a praise by those who traveled to Jerusalem to worship. Such journeys were often beset with hardships, and as a traveler traversed through the wilderness and the distances and the often harsh terrain to reach Jerusalem, this was a song penned for them. And this was written, as I said, the sons of Korah, for someone who's been through the seasons of life, the valleys and the wilderness experiences. And you can imagine this lone traveler going through this vast journey, this long journey from their town all the way to Jerusalem. And they had to go through some dark valleys, and they had to go through some dangerous places, and they had to climb this rugged terrain, experiencing hardships and trials and the dangers of a difficult journey, with a view of getting to Jerusalem, because in that time, the presence of God dwelled in Jerusalem. And so to experience God, they had to go to Jerusalem. But their mind was fixed on that, and so they endured the hardships of the terrain. Today, we don't have to make a physical pilgrimage, but we also experience our life that's fraught with similar experiences of ups and downs and heartaches and pains and successes and failures, as our journey in life parallels the journey of the hills and the valleys. And so the songwriter puts all this together, and he begins to pen this song of worship to God. And this is what he starts with. And he said, blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage. As they pass through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. They go from strength to strength till each appears before God in Zion. The valley of Baca is a desert country, filled with thorns and wild animals and vipers and dangers, and nearly impossible to travel without facing some kind of hardship. In another version, the valley of Baca is referred to as the valley of weeping, the valley of tears, the valley of loss. We want mountaintop experiences, but we often have to have valley of tears experiences. To experience the height of joy, sometimes we have to go through the depth of fear. And so the psalmist says, blessed are those whose strength is in you. See, if you don't know God personally, what you have, all you have is you. You are exhausted. You can't do anymore. You're tired. You're exhausted in life. You don't think you can make it. And you have no one else to rely on. There's no sort of well of energy or resurfacing that comes into your life. But the psalmist says, blessed are those whose strength is in you, God. The psalmist doesn't say, blessed are those who make it on their own. Blessed are those who are independent of God. Blessed are those who are created to just rely on their own instincts. No, he says, you are created to depend upon God. We all have a God-sized hole in our heart that only Christ can fill. And you can't put anything else in there that will make it satisfied. When you are weak, His strength is made perfect. When we are weak, we can lean on Him. And so he says, what joy for those whose strength comes from the Lord, who have set their minds on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. The song reminds us of someone traveling through life. And perspective is important, because your journey is not at its end. You are traveling in a journey. You're not at your destination yet. You're still on the journey of life. You haven't reached your final place yet. So, my current circumstance may be in the valley, but my mind is fixed on God. That's my perspective. My heart might be anxious, but my mind is fixed. My soul may be aching, but my mind is fixed. My emotions may be racing, but my mind is fixed. There must be too much going on all around me, and the stress of all life and job and home and all these things. My marriage is in a bad place. My things are going wrong. My kids are misbehaving. My in-laws are stressing me out. I'm paying too much for this Christmas party. But my mind is fixed on God. We have to have our mind fixed on God. It's a choice you and I get to make. The valley might be hard, but the psalmist says, as they pass through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. We may be in the valley, but it's not our final destination. We may be in the valley, but we're just passing through. We may be in the valley, but we don't end up in the valley. We're just going through. David put it this way, who also penned many songs from the book of Psalms. He says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, He's with me. I don't get to do this journey alone. I understand I want out. I understand it's stressful. I understand there's so much pressure. However, I also need to understand this, or at least I need to. The way is through and not around. It's through the valley that I have to go. And when I go through the valley, as these travelers did to travel to Jerusalem, they had to go through many valleys to get to Jerusalem. Zion, the house of God, the city of refuge, the place of peace. To get to the city of refuge, they had to travel through the valley of tears. For many, the valley is the pathway to the place of peace. To get to the place of peace, we have to go through the valley. And so the psalmist says, as they passed through the valley of Baca, they made it a spring. The autumn rain also covers it with pools. In another version, it says, when you are in a dry place, King James says, dig a well. Dig a well. Dig a hole. It's a container to catch the rain that falls down. And so when you're in a dry place, when you're in a difficult season, when you're in a hard place, bring a container, because God's blessings is going to pour down on you, and you have a container of refreshing. Show God your faith, and He will show you His faithfulness. Stretch out your hand, and God will take it for you. Get up and walk, and He will help you. When you go through difficult seasons, learn to rely on the God of impossible situations. Buried in this passage of pain, of struggle, of weeping, of tears, is actually a promise that says, if you dig the well, God will fill it. Maybe we are just so overwhelmed by all the things that we see around us that we don't take time to realize that in the midst of the valley, God is with us. And if we can just take some time, God will refresh us in the midst of the valley. Because if you draw near to me, God says, I will draw near to you. If you seek me, you will find me. If you make room for me, I will reveal myself to you. God rarely reveals Himself to those in a rush. Be still and know that I am God, He says. Prepare for His presence, and He will come. As we desire His help, His assistance, His presence, His provision, His deliverance, His joy, His peace, most oftentimes it's in the valley that we call out to Him for all of these things. It's not at the mountaintop, it's in the valley. God doesn't send you through the valley and meet you on the other side. This is a promise to us. God goes with us through the valley. He never leaves us alone, which means even though we are in difficult situations, God is with us. We're going through some heartache, God is with us. We're going through some issues, God is with us. We're going through some problems in our relationships, God is still with us. Don't try to rush through, but pause and invite the presence of God in, because He is God with us. God takes us through the valley. He goes in with you. God never says He wants you to go through the valleys by yourself. Go through the valleys alone. And if it's dark and there's a storm and trouble and you're weak, when you're in this valley, He's your light in darkness. When you're in the valley, He's your peace in the storm. When you're in the valley, He's your joy in the midst of trouble. When you're in the valley, your strength is made perfect in your weakness. We enjoy Him on the mountaintops, but we get to know Him in the valley. That's where we seek His strength. That's where we fix our mind. That's where we dig our well. So let me ask you, where are you on the journey of your life? What part of the journey are you on? Are you on the mountaintop experiences right now in your season? Are you climbing the mountain? Are you descending the mountain? Or are you in the valley? Where it's difficult, where the season is rough, where it feels like you can't make it through. Everything is dark around you. You don't feel like you can navigate through the situation. But remember, God is with us. Some of us that are in the valley right now, we're struggling. There might be someone around us that's on the mountaintop and they're having a great time, and you're looking at them and saying, I don't know what's going on in their life. They seem everything is going well for them, but God, why am I in the valley? We're all on the journey of life. We just might be in different spots on that journey. So if you're on a mountaintop experience, don't despise those that are still in the valley, because they're coming through just like you came through. Just like God delivered you, He'll deliver them. Just as He brought you through, He's going to bring them through. Don't despise people in their journey right now. So where are you in your life? Most importantly, though, how are you going to respond to where you are? How are you going to react? Are you going to give up? Are you going to throw in the towel? Are you going to say, wow, this is overwhelming, it's too much, I can't take it, I can't stand it, I'm ready to just give up? Or are you going to say, I know my God is with me. It might appear dark right now, but He is my light. I might find unrest in all places, but He is my peace. I might feel like I'm struggling through all this situation, but He is the way, the truth, and the life. I encourage you to read Psalm 84. The author the sons of Korah bring this to a kind of close by saying this: Lord Almighty, blessed is the one who trusts in you. The word bless doesn't just mean happy. It means fully satisfied, fully provided for, fully taken care of, resting at peace in the presence of God. And so my mood doesn't dictate my circumstances. My circumstances don't tell me how to react to. I don't let things around me dictate how I should feel or how I should react. I allow God, who I trust in, to show me the way through. And so the psalmist, as he writes this, it's a parallel. You can see so many parallels in Scripture. It's a parallel of Mary and Joseph on the journey to Bethlehem. Mary, of course, being very pregnant. The angel Gabriel came to her and said, you're going to have a child. And, Joseph took her as his wife, even though he didn't impregnate her, because this child was from the Holy Spirit. But they had to traverse this long journey to Bethlehem that was filled with fraughts and dangers and ups and downs. As the angel said to Mary, he said, the virgin will conceive a child, Matthew says. She will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. So as they were traveling and they faced danger, the promise of God kept going on in Mary's mind. God is with us. It might appear that people despise us and hate us, but I have Emmanuel, God with us. There might be dangers out there in the mountains and the valleys, but I have Emmanuel, God with us. The journey to Bethlehem took many days. Theologians think that Mary and Joseph had to travel about 145 kilometers at a 4K pace for roughly 8 hours a day. That would have been a rough journey for you in a comfortable car. It would have been an extremely difficult journey for pregnant Mary, going through ups and downs, hills and valleys. It could have been longer, depending on how long they rested. But she had the promise of Emmanuel, God with us. Now, you might be going through rough times in your life. You might be going through difficult seasons where you have valley experiences, valleys of tears and weeping and trying. and all these things going on in your life. But remember, if you have decided to follow Jesus, you have Emmanuel, God with us. In whatever season you're facing, whatever trial you're going through, whatever circumstance you find yourself in, does not negate the presence of God. Your circumstance don't dictate God's presence. He does. So even though you're in the valley, God is with us. You don't have to do life alone. You don't have to feel alone. You don't have to feel empty when the God who created you is inviting you into a relationship with Him. He tells you, my name is Emmanuel, God with you. The God of heaven came down to you. Get to know this Jesus. Get to experience His peace, a peace that passes all understanding. Especially at this season where we remember the birth of Jesus, but He was born so God can be with us. So God can come near. He is not a distant God. He is not an absent God. He's not a God of yesterday. He's a God of the present, and He's a God with us right now. And for those of you who are struggling with faith and you're wondering why God allows you to go through trials, it's because He wants you to know that you can trust Him in the midst of anything. And that He's with you even in the most difficult of seasons. He's not just with you when you have great times. He's with you when you have difficult seasons. And that is more important to know than just celebrating Him on the mountaintops. That He is with us in the valley of the shadow of death. He is with us in the valley of weeping. He is with us in the valley of tears. He is with us in the valley of pain. He is with us in the valley of desperation. He is with us in the valley of loneliness. He is God with us. I just want to leave 2 questions with you as we pick this up next week. Number 1, have you let your circumstances shape your view? Kind of an added question. How can you let God shape your view moving forward? My words are getting mixed up. How can you let God shape your view moving forward? So often in life, we are faced with circumstances telling us how we should react, right? We lose our job, we get stressed out. Someone says something negative to us, we're all emotional. But when you learn to let God shape you, when your identity comes from Him and not from people around you, it doesn't matter how close or how far they are from you, God should be the one that shapes your view. Because you stand on an unshakable truth of who He is when you stand upon His view. And no man, no woman, no child can pull you off when you are found on the solid rock of Jesus Christ. So have you let circumstances, surroundings, people shape your view? Or have you let God do it? And if you haven't yet, how do you shift it? From hungering after people's approvals, people's desires, people's wants of you, to what God desires for you. Number 2, and we've all had this, right? We've all had valley experiences. None of us here have just had mountaintop experiences. How do you leverage your valley experience to build up your faith? See, our faith is built when we learn to trust someone. Our faith is built when we learn to trust God. We don't really learn to trust God on the mountaintop. We learn to trust God in the valley. We learn to trust Him when things are desperate. and we can lean on him. How does he prove that he's a deliverer? When he delivers you. How does he prove he's a healer? When he heals you. How does he prove he's a supplier and provider? When he provides and supplies for you. You don't need those experiences on the mountaintop. You need those experiences in the valley. It's where we get to know who our Heavenly Father really is. It's in the valley. It's not on the mountaintop. So how do you leverage your valley experience to build up your faith? Especially when you know that God has not abandoned you. You're not alone. God is with you in the valley. He takes you through the valley. He doesn't just leave you on one side and pick you up on the other side. He takes you through. And so when you get to the mountaintop, you celebrate what God did for you in the valley. You give him praise for what he did in the pain, in the heartache, and the suffering, the neglection, the desperation. You give him praise because he didn't abandon you. He didn't leave you. He brought you with him to the mountain. So let's give him some praise. Would you put your hands together and just give him some thanks?
Thank you for joining us today at Transform Church. We hope that you were encouraged by the message. And we are so grateful that you spent this time with us. Now, if you've decided to follow Jesus or just have some questions, please get in touch with us using the email address shown below. We would love to guide you as you take these important steps. If you would like to visit us in person, we would love to meet you. Just let us know when you will be joining us, and we will be here with open arms to welcome you and show you around. We hope you will consider supporting us, and we would greatly appreciate your financial support to help us continue bringing these messages. Please type the link shown below into your web browser, and it will provide you with all your giving options. It's been awesome having you with us, and we hope to see you again soon. Don't forget to apply what you've learned today and come back and let us know how this has helped you. Bye for now. We hope you have an amazing week. See you next time.